Have you ever stopped and wondered how a whole country can get swept up in an idea? Or how some random product suddenly becomes the next big thing seemingly overnight? Well, it turns out there's a kind of playbook for that, a psychological manual written more than 100 years ago that laid the groundwork for everything from selling you stuff you don't need to mobilizing entire nations for war. And it all starts with one simple question. So let's make this personal for a second. Just think about it. The last time you were at a concert, or maybe a big sports game, or even just squished into a packed subway car, did you feel a little different? Did your own way of thinking kind of shift? The answer to that question, well, that's at the very heart of this entire story.
So let's meet the man behind it all, a French intellectual named Gustave Le Bon. Back in 1895, he dropped a book that would, no exaggeration, change the world. It was called The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. And this wasn't just some dusty academic theory. It turned out to be a shockingly accurate and dangerous blueprint for mass manipulation.
Now, to be fair, Le Bon wasn't the only one thinking about this stuff. The 19th century was buzzing with ideas about group behavior, from folks like Charles Mackay talking about the madness of crowds to Gabriel Tardet's work on imitation. But Le Bon's book, it was different. It was so practical, so direct, that his blueprint for crowd control just blew everything else out of the water.
And here's his central kind of chilling idea. Le Bon said that when we join a crowd, our individual, rational self just dissolves. It gets swallowed up and replaced by this collective mind that doesn't think, it feels. It's impulsive, it's emotional, and it is incredibly easy to influence. So the key takeaway isn't just that your thinking changes a bit, it's that you are no longer entirely you.
Okay, so if a crowd has a mind of its own, how exactly does that mind work? Well, Le Bon broke it all down, basically creating a user's manual for the crowd. So let's dig into the specific rules of this hidden playbook.
He basically boiled it down to 5 key traits that define how a crowd behaves. We're going to walk through each one, and I think you'll start to see pretty quickly how these can be used or exploited.
First up is anonymity. Think about it. When you're just one face in a sea of thousands, you kind of feel invisible, right? That feeling makes your personal sense of responsibility just plummet. The fear of getting caught, the fear of consequences, it all fades away. And that empowers people to do things they would never dream of doing alone.
Next, we've got suggestibility. In a crowd, your rational brain kind of takes a back seat. This makes you incredibly open to influence. You become a sponge, just soaking up whatever emotions and ideas are floating around. And that's what makes a crowd's mood shift on a dime, from happy to angry, in seconds.
And Le Bon himself just lays out exactly how to take advantage of that. Listen to this quote from him. He says that simple, confident statements with zero proof or logic behind them are one of the best ways to plant an idea in a crowd's mind. Critical thinking is out the window. All you need is a strong, repeated claim.
Now these next two are a package deal: contagion and irrationality. Contagion is the idea that feelings and emotions literally spread through a crowd like a virus. One person's anger or panic can ignite the whole group in an instant. And that emotional wildfire fuels irrationality. The crowd stops thinking logically and starts running purely on gut instinct. This is the engine that drives riots and mob justice.
And the final piece of the puzzle? The crowd is basically a powerful headless beast. It needs a leader, a strong, charismatic figure who can step in and give all that raw emotion a direction. Le Bon called them men of action, leaders who use powerful, simple language to shape the crowd's feelings into a focused purpose.
So you might be thinking, okay, this is all just some old-timey theory. Well, no, it was put into terrifying practice. Let's look at our first case study and see how Le Bon's ideas literally became the playbook for one of the darkest regimes in human history.
Just look at the Nazi propaganda machine, run by Hitler and Goebbels. It's like they had Le Bon's book open right next to him. They hammered people with emotionally charged messages to shut down reason. They took complex problems and boiled them down to a simple us versus them. They repeated their lies over and over. They created powerful symbols to unify the crowd, built this whole cult of personality around Hitler as the great leader, and they were masters at using fear and crisis to get people moving. It's a textbook application.
But here's where things get really wild. This playbook wasn't just for dictators. What's so fascinating is how the exact same principles were picked up and used not for political control, but for selling products by the man who basically invented modern public relations.
And the parallel here is just stunning. A guy named Edward Bernays, who, get this, was Sigmund Freud's nephew, took Le Bon's ideas and built the entire field of PR. So, where Goebbels used fear and patriotism to gain political control, Bernays used desire and the dream of a better life to achieve commercial control. The tools were identical, only the goals were different. Let's take his most famous campaign, Torches of Freedom. He was hired to get women to smoke cigarettes, but he didn't sell them on tobacco. No, he linked smoking to the women's liberation movement. He used emotional association, freedom. He created a powerful symbol, the cigarette as a torch of freedom. He staged a huge media event at a parade, got influential women to participate. He tapped into the crowd's deep desires, not their rational minds.
And did it work? Oh yeah. The numbers are staggering. In 1923, only about 5% of cigarettes were sold to women. After his Torches of Freedom stunt in 1929, that number more than doubled, and it just kept going up. That is the insane power of knowing how to pull these psychological levers.
Okay, so this is all pretty bleak, right? If this playbook is so effective, are we all just puppets on a string? Well, not necessarily. Le Bon himself was terrified by the monster he'd identified, and he actually proposed a few ways to fight back.
He argued that the only real defense against the pull of the crowd was to build a stronger individual. He believed that if you develop your own critical thinking skills, if you foster your own sense of independence, and build a solid moral compass, you can basically immunize yourself. The whole key was to value and celebrate individuality over just blindly conforming.
But here's the tragic twist in the story. Le Bon hoped that his work would be used in schools to help create smarter, more resilient citizens. But instead, the people who really studied his book, the ones who made it their Bible, were the propagandists, the advertisers, and the political spin doctors.
Which of course brings us right back to you. This playbook isn't some ancient secret anymore. It's being used all around us every single day, in ads, in political campaigns, all over social media. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. Now that you know the rules of the game, who's using them on you right now?